tale, and all the days that came for us, or as the wind upon our sails.
There is a forest in every father, as he stands amidst the wild. There is a mountain in every mother, sturdy force of heart and mind.
Shan ve'ahira ve'imruchi kiviati Adonai li velo ira Gviati Adonai li velo ira. My soul I give to you, my spirit in your care. Draw me near, I shall not fear. Hold me in your hand. Draw me near, I shall not fear. Safe within your hand. The light of life is a finite flame. Like the Sabbath candles, life is kindled, it burns, it glows. It is radiant with warmth and beauty. But soon it fades. Its substance is consumed and is no more. Yet we must not despair. We are more than a memory vanishing into darkness. With our lives, we give life. Something of us can never die. We move in the eternal cycle of darkness and death, of light and life. The memorial candle we are about to light is a sign of this truth. As it burns pure and bright, so may the memory of Mike Birnbaum bring light and inspiration to our lives. We now invite Fran to kindle the memorial candle. In our tradition, we say, Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, Yehi Shem, Adonai mevarach. It is out of the mystery that we come. And it is into the mystery that we go. And through it all, we bless the source of life for the gift of life. We gather the memorial for Mike Birnbaum. Zichrono livracha. May his memory be a blessing. We gather in grief. We gather in love. So much love. Let our love reach out to the bereaved. Mike's beloved wife for nearly 60 years, Fran. His son, David, and his daughter, Sloan. His son, Jeff, wife, Erica, their son, Josh, and their daughter, Reese. His son, Reed, wife Corey, their sons Dylan, Glenn, and Ari. Nephews Steve and Norm, and niece Barbara.
Please listen. You are remembered
in love. You are part of the now in me. All the good, all the love, all the comfort a person can give is remembered and repeated for your sake. Time changes, everything passes, but love. Peace be with you.
Amen. So today we gather to celebrate Mike's life and mourn his death. We begin to open our eyes and our hearts to the new ways that Mike's spirit will continue to bless us. In the Jewish tradition, this time of grieving is a very sacred time. We invite God into such a moment by opening our hearts to the full range of feelings that accompany profound loss.
With this next prayer, El Malei Rachamim, God, source of all compassion, we release our hold on you, Mike. We pray that your soul moves on in freedom. We call on the deepest well of compassion, the sweetest love, the boundless acceptance, for Shekhinah to receive you into her fullness, to shelter you under her wings. We pray that you are finding your way home, free from pain and worry, where there is only love, where there is only peace. All who are able, please rise in body or in spirit.
Il Mahale Rachamim Shochen Bamrumim Hamsei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina B'malhut Kedoshim Utorim Kizohar Harakia Mazhirim Et Nishmat Mordechai Ben Gedalia Shehalach Leolamo Bal Harachamim Yastireu Beseter Kanafav Leolamim Vitzro Betzro Hachayim et Nishmato Adonai Hunachalato V'yanuach Beshalom al Mishkavo V'nomar Amen. Please be seated. Mike was born in Brooklyn on Halloween of 1942 to Charles and Jean Birnbaum. Charles was a lawyer who worked long hours. Mike had an older sister, Cynthia, who was 8 years older. There was a girl in Mike's high school American history class named Fran Strauss, who he invited to his birthday party on Halloween. You'll hear from his sons, there were a lot of celebrities in Mike and Fran's class. Fran caught Mike's eye. Mike asked Fran to go to services with him every Friday night. Although Fran didn't usually go to services, she went with Mike. They dated, going to football games, ice skating at Rockefeller Center, to the movies. Mike and Fran were the same age, but Mike had skipped a grade and graduated a year before Fran. Mike decided that he wanted to be an engineer. He went to Brooklyn Polytech and he got a degree in applied mechanics. Fran went to Brooklyn College and got a degree in education. As soon as Fran graduated, Mike and Fran got married at Ahavat Shalom Temple in Brooklyn. They went to Bermuda for their honeymoon. They rented motorbikes to get around and had a 10-day whirlwind honeymoon. Fran graduated and taught elementary school for 3 years while Mike got his master's and PhD in engineering at Brooklyn Polytech. When Mike finished, he had 3 job offers. GE offered him a job in Pennsylvania, Shell Oil in Houston, and Sandia National Laboratory in Livermore. Mike and Fran wisely chose to come to the Bay Area. They rented a house in Walnut Creek in 1967, at a time when the town had only a few restaurants and a lot of walnut trees. Fran was pregnant with David, and they didn't know anyone. But Fran got invited to a Hadassah meeting and fell in love with the Jewish community in Walnut Creek. They joined B'nai Shalom. They bought their first house in Alamo, near Stone Valley School. Jeff was born there 2.5 years later. Soon they needed a bigger house and moved to Danville, where Reed was born 3 years later. B'nai Shalom synagogue they had joined was a conservative shul, and they were looking for a reform temple. So they moved to Temple Isaiah, where all the boys were bar mitzvah. When Reed was about 3 or 4, they had built a house in Diablo West on 2/3 of an acre, where they lived for about 20 years. Mike's work for Sandia was top secret, working on nuclear weapons development. Sandia's headquarters were in Albuquerque, where Mike went regularly. There was a test site in Los Alamos, where he visited regularly as well. Fran had a lot of time alone with the boys, while Mike worked long hours. But Mike coached soccer for all the boys, and the whole family played tennis. And Mike tried to be a very involved dad. He loved his boys, and the family vacationed in Tahoe every year. They had a very memorable vacation in Colorado, staying at the historic Stanley Hotel. They went to Israel after Mike's mother died in 1987. They hired a tour guide who took them all over the country. They climbed Masada, floated in the Dead Sea, spent time in Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, Haifa, and had a great time. When they lived in Diablo West, Mike became a runner. He ran long distances. If the boys had a soccer game in Dublin, they would drive and Mike would run. Every year he would run the Devil Mountain Run in Danville and the Primos to Primos from Danville to San Ramon. Mike had a very intense job, and running was a way of letting off steam. He ran for many years until he wore out his hip and had to have it replaced. Then he became a walker and walked miles and miles. Fran had started giving piano lessons, which she offered for many years. The boys would come home from school and there would be lessons going on, not always to their pleasure. Fran and Mike loved to go to plays and concerts and out to dinner with friends. Mike retired in 1997 after 30 years at Sandia. When the grandchildren started coming, a new chapter in Mike and Fran's life began. Mike loved his grandkids. Jeff and Erica had Josh and lived close by. Mike and Fran babysat a lot. Reed and Corey had their 3 kids. Every Thursday, Mike and Fran would drive to San Jose to be with these grandchildren. David and his wife Corinne had Sloan, and Corinne got transferred to Rome for her work. This began an annual trek to Rome for Mike and Fran. They would build vacations around their trip to Italy. I took Viking river boat cruises on the Danube from Budapest to Nuremberg, on the Seine from Paris to Normandy, and on the Amstel River from Amsterdam through Brussels and Bruges and back. Mike and Fran began going to High Holy Day services here at Beth Chaim, not here, but and then they joined in 2013, greatly enriching our community. On their 50th anniversary, they did a 2-week cruise around Italy and the Dalmatian coast. They rented a house in Como and had the whole family, all the ganze Mishpacha, the whole family gathered, joined them. And it was one of the most memorable vacations for the entire family ever. Mike was diagnosed with dementia and began a very difficult period of cognitive decline. We honor deeply honor Fran's dedication and commitment to caregiving for Mike during this time. So we engage the challenging and powerfully important process of actively turning our memories of Mike into blessings.
A prayer of comfort for the mourners before we invite a few family members and friends up to the bima to speak. Hamakom yenachem, yenachem etchem. May the Holy One comfort you. Hamakom yenachem, yenachem etchem. May our love embrace you. Betoch sha'ar avelei Tzion, veYerushalayim. May his memory bring you peace, bring you strength, and be a blessing. Baruch atah bevoecha, uvaruch atah betzetecha. Hamakom yenachem, yenachem etchem. May the Holy One comfort you.
Hamakom yenachem, yenachem etchem. May our love embrace you. Now we invite up his son David.
I want to thank you all for coming today to celebrate the life of my dad, Michael Robert Birnbaum. Dad grew up in Brooklyn on East 14th Street across from Kelly Park, where he spent many happy hours perfecting his handball game. Through a loophole in the system, Dad was able to attend James Madison High School, where his classmates included a few now household names like Bernie Sanders, Carole King, and Judge Judy, who apparently had a little thing for Dad. But then, at 15, Dad met Mom, and by the time Mom blew out the candles on her sweet 16 birthday cake, she and Dad had started dating, beginning a nearly 60-year-long love story that became the foundation of our family. Now, Dad was more than just a teenage heartthrob who played a mean game of handball. He also possessed a brilliant mind, and after graduating high school at the age of 16, attended the Polytechnic Institute of New York, now the Engineering School of NYU, where he earned a doctorate in applied mechanics, along with a couple of other equally impressively nerdy engineering degrees. In 1967, Dad took a job with Sandia National Laboratories. Thankfully, he turned down that Shell Oil gig in Houston. And during the summer of love, he and Mom, who was a couple months pregnant with yours truly, packed up their Plymouth and headed for California, starting a migration process that years later brought over his 3 nephews and niece. Sandia became Dad's professional home for almost 30 years. He worked on a wide variety of always classified projects, the details of which he couldn't share until many years later after they'd been, of course, declassified. At some point in the early 80s, I remember Dad reading from a red binder with a sob foot stamped on the spine. I asked Dad, what does sob foot stand for? And he told me that was a code name that his British colleagues came up with for the project that they were working on together, and that it stood for son of a bitch from out of town. A cheeky reference to Dad. Gotta love that dry British sense of humor. Years later, once it had been declassified, Dad also revealed that he worked on SDI, more commonly referred to as the Star Wars Initiative. Dad was an engineer at heart and loved digging into the minute details of everything he worked on, including home projects. What Dad didn't like was work politics, and he refused to play the game, which is why in later years he took on the roles of ombudsman and recruiter. The latter he truly loved and even volunteered to keep doing post-retirement, as he took immense joy in talking with soon-to-be graduates, seeing their potential and helping them launch their careers. Dad traveled a lot for work. He flew regularly to Albuquerque, DC, New York, and for a time London. By the time Dad had retired, which was at the age of 54, mind you, that's 2 years younger than I am now, and I'm still working, and will be for a long time. He had racked up an impressive 1 million frequent flyer miles and a variety of fun and not so fun travel stories, including, while once flying first class, being mistaken for Richard Gere. And he couldn't convince the flight attendant that he actually wasn't. Apparently she thought Michael Birnbaum was his traveling pseudonym. Dad might have grumbled a bit about the cramped flights and endless airports, but he definitely had a sense of adventure and loved exploring the world, especially when he was able to do so with Mom. I'll now pass the microphone over to my brother Jeff to continue Dad's saga.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to go off script for a second because a couple bizarre things have happened over the last 12 hours. Let's see, Erica Reese and I went and saw Bob Marley on Tuesday. And all week, Erica's been asking me why Rita Marley wears the Star of David. And I go and I sit down, and here's a little tissue thing with the Star of David on it. So that's kind of crazy. Then last night, I had this dream, and Rita Marley was in my dream, and we're up in Bend, Oregon, riding bikes together. So then this morning, I came downstairs thinking about my dream, and I see Josh on the couch at 8 o'clock, and Josh is not supposed to be here. He's supposed to be in Boston. So somehow Erica and Josh pulled off an incredible surprise. That's never happened in my life, and I'm very blessed that, Josh, you're here to celebrate Baba's life. So now to go on script, maybe. All right, so I'm going to talk about Dad's life and provide some color and insight. So Dad had really big feet. It's amazing he didn't trip over them more often. As his disease progressed, his balance, as we know, became worse and worse, and he was only able to shuffle to get around. He adapted, though, and my theory is his big feet supported him like snowshoes in Danville. As Dad's disease worsened, I was very intentional to hug Dad. Not just a run-of-the-mill hug, but a hug that lasted longer and had real purpose. I wanted Dad to feel our connection. Because away from Dad, I did spend a lot of time thinking how scary it would be to not remember who you are, where you are, and the people around you. So my therapy for Dad and for me was a long hug. So Dad had the best hairline. He genuinely had more hair than any of his sons to the day he died, as you can tell. Dad kept his hair very short, but when he grew it out, as you'll see in those photos, he had an epic Jufro. As Dave mentioned, Dad did a lot of secret stuff at work, which required government clearances. We always thought it was cool to hear that the FBI would talk to Mom and Dad's friends and neighbors and vet him. So as the rabbi mentioned, Dad took exercise to an extreme. He was one of the OG joggers in Danville. He would regularly put in 6 miles daily, and on the weekends, 12. He would jog to our soccer games in Pleasanton from Danville. And when he got his hip replaced from the wear and tear from running, his doctor suggested to back off and to bike. So Dad got an indoor bike, a stationary bike, and he put 100,000 miles on this bike. Dave told me that 100,000 miles is the equivalent of 4 times around Earth. He broke the bike, literally. So then he started to walk. And as most of you know, he walked and walked and walked. He was back to putting in 12 miles daily, walking to meet his friends, to then proceed to walk home. So Dad was a fixture at the local Primos to Primos. This was when Primos had a restaurant in San Ramon. Primos to Primos Run and Devil Mountain Run. Not just once, but on 2 separate races, he picked up kids of friends who could not finish the race, and he put them on their shoulders. And he crossed the finish line with a big smile and the kids on his shoulders. My brothers and I played a lot of competitive soccer together. Dad absolutely loved watching our games and sometimes coaching our teams. And then when his grandkids played sports, forget about it, he was a fixture at all their games and matches. He also liked refereeing Mustang soccer. When we were younger, he reffed for many years. He reffed multiple games on a weekend. Again, more running for Dad. So Dad was the go-to tutor for our friends that needed help with complex math problems. As an engineer, he'd pull out his graph paper with the little squares, and he'd write down the problems, and he'd proceed to problem solve for the answer. So Dad loved his Birkenstocks and his Keens, always wore socks. Dad loved his leaf blower. He would blow every darn leaf off the driveway and patio. It was therapeutic for him. And, I have the leaf blower now. So as we think about Dad's legacy and we honor him, I think about how Dad lived his life. And I would sum it up with the golden rule. Not he who had the golden rules, but to treat people the way you want to be treated. I think that's how Dad can be remembered. So thank you all for coming. Love you, Dad.
All right. I would like to thank everyone for coming today to celebrate my dad's life and to be here for our mom and our families. I thank you to Rabbi Dan. Thank you to Beth Chaim for hosting us and the many volunteers to make this happen. My name is Reed, and I am the youngest son of Fran and Mike, of Mike's 3 boys. Dad would often say, be a catalyst. Whether in sports or in life, be a disruptor, be a change agent. As I look back on my life, the biggest change agent or catalyst has been my dad, giving me honest feedback, letting me know when I had an off game or needed to put in more effort outside of practice if I wanted to improve, whether in sports, school, or my professional life. Dad led by example, always putting in the effort. He never did anything halfway. As my brother Jeff mentioned, he was all in, whether he was going for a run, going for a walk, reinforcing the deck for an earthquake, or creating a disaster plan that included filling the bathtubs with water, turning off the gas line to the house with a wrench he secured to the gas line, and then meeting away from the house at our designated meeting place. Dad was a planner, and he was patient. That patience and planning allowed him to retire when he was 54. Dad retired on my birthday in 1997, after nearly 30 years of working for Sandia National Laboratory. Following his retirement, he and my mom traveled, visited family on the East Coast, vacationed in Europe, and enjoyed a few cruises. This period also included Dad not only being a father to 3 boys, but a father-in-law to 3 daughters-in-law, Erica, Corey, and Corinne. Dad's family also grew by 6 grandchildren, first Josh, followed by Reese, Dylan, Glenn, Sloan, and finally Ari. The trips that he previously took with Mom soon became family adventures. Trips to Santa Barbara, Laguna Niguel, Pacific Grove, Aptos, Rome, Yosemite, and of course my parents' 50th wedding anniversary, where we all stayed together, all 14 of us, in a villa in Lake Como, Italy. Dad put his family first, a trait that he inherited from his mother, my Grandma Jean. Dad loved his role as Baba to his grandchildren. Maybe Dad thought he could take all the learnings from raising his 3 boys and apply those learnings to being a grandfather. There were a few mistakes or learnings along the way, confusing Mike's hard lemonade for regular lemonade, for one. But with Glenn's nap that followed, I'm sure there was some debate as to how bad that really was. Years later, we would hear about an upside-down car seat or some other shenanigans, but no one ever got hurt, and every one of the grandkids looked forward to their visits with Nanny and Baba. Baba's grandchildren could always bring a smile to his face, even when he was at his worst and his illness had taken so much from him. There was always a smile for his grandchildren. And later, when visiting the park with Mom or Elizabeth, who was such a blessing and allowed Mom to keep Dad at home an extra year, he would see children at play in the park and smile. During his last year at home, we would take walks, typically along the same path, the bench walk, for those of you who know. At the same turn or portion of our walk, he would always ask the same questions: how I was doing, about my family, about work, to remind him where I lived and who I was married to, the names of my children, always curious, always kind, and wanting to know more about me. His curiosity and interest in others never waned. While he was sad at times he couldn't remember, he always had a smile on his face and love in his eyes. It's a strange new world now that he's gone, at least physically. Spiritually, he will be with us, as he has left us with so many memories. His memory is a blessing. His legacy impacting so many lives, making people better than they thought they could be. You could say he's been a catalyst.
Thank you. I'd like to now invite up Mike's grandson, Glenn, who will read words from the other grandchildren, and Josh.
Good afternoon. My name is Glenn Birnbaum, the middle son of Reed and Corey Ann. Thank you for all being here today to honor and celebrate the remarkable life of my grandfather, Michael Birnbaum, or us grandchildren refer to him as Baba. I'm speaking on behalf of all of Baba's grandchildren, Josh, Reese, Dylan, myself, Sloan, and Ari. I'll be sharing a few stories from each of Baba's grandkids that we will carry with us as we grow into the people that he inspired us to be. I'm filled with a mix of emotions, of course sadness from our loss, but also deep gratitude for the privilege of having our lives marked by such an incredible individual. Most of you know Baba was incredibly smart, calculated, and pensive. To us, he was sweet, caring, and an amazing grandpa. Baba loved spending time with his grandchildren, and we share many wonderful memories with him. I feel very lucky to have enjoyed weekly visits with Nanny and Baba when I was younger, and occasional sleepovers when my parents got tired of my brothers and I remember sleeping over at Nanny and Baba's, and Baba snoring so loud, most of us were never able to get much sleep. Because of this, Nanny had instructed us to pat on Baba's chest at night to alert him when he was shaking the house as he snored. One such sleepover, when I was 6 years old, I was sleeping on the floor in Nanny and Baba's room, where for some reason I'd expected to get a good night's rest. After a couple hours of torture, I couldn't handle it anymore. I got up to pat Baba's chest as I was instructed. The first couple pats did nothing, so I began tapping Baba's chest harder. This also did not work. So I started pounding on Baba's chest. But also to no avail, I had one option left, and punch Baba's chest until he stopped or woke up. Thinking that he was being attacked by an intruder, but luckily it only turned out to be his grandson trying to get some rest. In true Baba fashion, instead of getting annoyed, once he knew it was his grandson, he picked me up with a smile on his face and tucked me back into bed. I'll always remember those sleepovers, and Baba waking up always so happy to see his little tootsies. Being the youngest of 3 brothers and all the cousins, my brother Ari was fortunate enough to be able to spend a lot of one-on-one time with Nanny and Baba. Although he was younger, he remembers Nanny and Baba coming to visit every Tuesday. Baba would come ready for a day's adventure, wearing lots of sunscreen, sunglasses, and his favorite sun hat. Baba loved taking Ari to the park, and music classes, and library. After, they would go to breakfast at their usual spot, Cafe San Jose, and Baba would always order the exact same thing, extra crispy or burnt potatoes, and a whole lot of napkins. Just to be prepared for Ari's messy eating habits. And even towards the end, whenever Baba saw any of his grandchildren, we would always put a smile on his face, and he would always ask things like, how was school and how sports were going. In honor of Baba, Ari will be ordering burnt potatoes the next time he goes to Cafe San Jose. Being the second youngest cousin, Sloane's favorite memory was going to Black Hawk Plaza to feed the ducks. He would always hold the bag of seeds for her so she wouldn't spill. Afterwards, they would go to the park, and Baba would push her on the swing, and no matter how high or how fast he pushed her, it was never enough. He would lift her up onto his shoulders if it was hard for her to see, so she wouldn't feel excluded. She will miss him continuously, but always knows he is with her. Dylan's favorite memory with Baba was the more recent visit, a few months before he passed. This visit will always be memorable to him because they played toss with the ball. Baba was so happy, laughing, and all smiles, and having a good time. This reminded Dylan of the weekly Tuesday visits with Nanny and Baba. When he was younger, he looked forward to the Tuesdays, getting out of school early to go spend time with Nanny and Baba. Baba would often play ball with us. He was always happy, patient, and full of joy playing with us. Despite some brotherly battles, Baba laughed and was always encouraging. Dylan will forever remember Baba's smile, his laughter, and the joy he expressed when spending time with us.
Hey everyone, I'm Josh. I'm Baba's oldest grandson, and I guess I'm now spiritually connected to Rita Marley for the rest of my life. As everyone else has already mentioned, just want to say thank you for all your continuous love and support for our nanny. Goes without saying, but the last couple of years would have been much more difficult without a strong and loving support system, so thank you. For my sister Reese, Baba's oldest granddaughter, one of her favorite memories is when she and Baba would walk from him and Nanny's house to Black Hawk Plaza. He would take her to the car museum, and they would look at all the old cars and talk about them in very particular detail, I'm sure, picking and choosing their favorites. He's the reason why Reese now has a love for classic cars. Last but not least, I just want to take full credit for giving Baba his name, Baba, probably due to some inability to say grandpa, but as the oldest, naturally I have the longest memory of Baba. And for this reason, I had a really tough time choosing just one story to remember Baba by. I remember rides in Baba's convertible to go pick up burgers and milkshakes from In-N-Out. I remember when Baba would come to every single one of my sports games, as he did for all my cousins, with a big bucket hat and at least 2 inches of sunscreen on his face, which we would later refer to as Baba face, and we still will, I'm sure. I remember when Baba would help me with my homework and augmenting my general understanding of the world. and then I would return the favor and help him with his computer. I remember being consoled, lectured, and endlessly taught by Baba. Baba was the coolest grandfather, blasting the Beach Boys and the Bee Gees in his jet black convertible. He was the most caring grandpa, brushing off any of our skim knees whenever we were playing around doing something he definitely told us not to do. And Baba was always the smartest room in every room that he walked into. Baba tried his best to be whatever we needed him to be. And I see Baba in my dad, I see Baba in my uncles, and of course, I just want to see Baba in myself.
Like Josh, I know that all grandkids want to be like Baba, and we will carry these memories as we grow into the people he wanted us to be. We will miss the tracksuit, the sunscreen, and of course the keens that he wore to every occasion. We will miss Baba's laugh, his smile, and how he called every grandkid Tootsie. Through these stories and countless more, we will be sure to always love and remember Baba. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to invite up Mike's nephew, Steve.
Nice turnout. Hello, everyone, and thank you all for coming today. For those of you who don't know me, I am Steve Karp, Mike's oldest nephew. For me, he was more than an uncle. He was like a second father, and in some ways, he was more like a father to me, my brothers, and my sister, than my real dad. Whenever I had something important take place in my life, good or bad, he was my first call. When I had cancer, I called him first. When I won an award for my writing, or took a new job, or something good was going to happen, like going into a Hall of Fame, I called him before anyone else. So when my Aunt Fran asked me to speak today, I figured it'd be easy. I mean, I write for a living. How hard could it be to say a few kind words about someone I admired so much? But then I started to think about what I wanted to say. And I quickly realized that it wasn't going to be so easy. In nearly 68 years, I've accumulated a lot of material, so many stories about my uncle. There's no way I could condense it to 3 minutes, but I'm going to try, Rabbi. So here are my thoughts about my Uncle Mike. He was a brilliant guy, a humble person, a somewhat secretive individual given the nature of his work. So one day, this is in the early 1990s, he came to Las Vegas where I was living and working, writing for the Las Vegas Sun newspaper, and he flew on one of those unmarked planes that went from McCarran Airport in Vegas to the Nevada test site up near Tonopah. You may have seen these planes. They were white with like a red stripe, no markings on them. I'd seen those planes so many times, and I always wondered what it was like to be on those planes. So of course, my curiosity being a reporter, I asked him about the plane. What was it like? What the hell's up there in Tonopah that's so important? So, of course, he gives me that stare, like, don't go there. Don't go there. You know better than that. And, you know, over the years, I tried numerous times, and my aunt could attest to this, to inquire about his work, and each time, no luck. So I guess, to coin a phrase we use in Vegas, What happened at Sandia Labs stayed at Sandia Labs. And you know what? It made me respect my uncle even more. Because after all, he must have been doing something really important that he couldn't talk about it with his nephew. But besides being really smart, my uncle was also very wise. And I learned a lot from him. Perhaps the most important was to be kind, to be respectful, and to be polite and responsible. He was raised the right way, and I know this because I got to experience it with my grandmother, his mother, Jean, when I lived with her. So as role models go, I was blessed to have him as one of mine. Now, of course, when you're a kid, you don't always listen or understand. So let me share this quick story with everybody. I was visiting California for the first time. This was 1970, I believe. And I convinced my uncle to take me to a baseball game. I was a huge sports fan, and I love baseball. And the Giants had played the Montreal Expos. Remember those guys? They're now the Washington Nationals. So they're playing at Old Candlestick Park. And I'm in Danville. It's the middle of July or late July. And it's pretty warm in the summertime in Danville. And I figured the proper attire to go to this game with my uncle was shorts and a t-shirt, like I would if I was going to Yankee Stadium. So my uncle looks at me and says, go put on long pants and a sweatshirt. And I'm like, why? It's like 90 degrees out. And we go back and forth. I ask Aunt Fran, what should I do? She says, listen to your uncle. Of course, I don't listen to Aunt Fran or Uncle Mike. And he finally says, fine, get in the car. I'm in shorts and a t-shirt. We get to Candlestick Park, and if any of you have ever been there, you know how cold it gets, especially in July. And it's absolutely freezing. And here I am, I'm shivering. No sweatshirt, no hat, no hot chocolate. I asked Uncle Mike, just shook his head, ignored me. Almost 9, and we stayed virtually the entire game just to rub it in. So I learned something really important that cold July night in San Francisco. And what was that? Simple. Uncle Mike says something, you listen. Am I right, guys? There you go. And I'm proud to say I never made that mistake again. So in closing, I shall miss that wisdom. I shall miss that special bond I had. And most of all, I shall miss that love.
Thank you. Mike's nephew, Norm.
Hello, everybody. I am Norm Karp, the youngest male nephew, I believe, if I got it right. Is that right? First off, thank you all for coming. Secondly, I see a lot of faces that I don't recognize, which is good, because that means he touched a lot of different people in a lot of good ways, and that kind of ties into what my main thing I want to mention. July 30th, 1977, and there's probably very few people in this room who knows what that date means. That was the date I came out and my life had changed forever. And Fran, Uncle Mike, upon me graduating high school, didn't want to see me just waste my life and not do anything with it, invited me to come out, try the junior college, live with them as long as I want, and if I didn't like it, go join the Army, do what you want. And came out, and it was the absolute life-changing event that you can imagine. I went to school, I met my future wife, had my son, grandkids, a great life. And I owe it all to both of them. And I'm hoping that he changed a lot of lives out there with you folks as well. Someone had mentioned he was humble. That doesn't even begin to start. And I do have a bunch of cute little stories. I don't know if I'll be able to get to them or not, but I will say while I was going to school, my second year at college, I had a huge load, 7 major classes, not, schluff stuff. And I thought, well, I'll take physics 101 as one of them. And I struggled. All my other classes did great. And so, of course, I go to my uncle, can you help me? This doesn't make sense. And he's trying to teach me physics 101, and he must have thought I was the stupidest man on earth. How could you not get this? This is so easy. But he tried, and he tried more. He never gave up on me. I did wind up quitting the class or failing, I forgot which, and moving on. And physics never became my future, although I used a lot of it as I got older. What else? Just so many things that I remember him with the running, and I remember he helped me buy my first car, and I saw this cool Volvo sports car that I wanted. It was about $7,000. This is 1977, so it was a lot of money, and I had none. He was going to buy it, and I was going to pay him back. And he said, Norm, I think maybe what we should do is really look at this Pinto over here for about $1,800. And I think I still have the sales receipt, I think, saved. And of course, this is a cool 2-door Volvo sports car that was really nice. And but we wound up getting the Pinto. And what probably a lot of people don't know is he actually knew a whole bunch about auto mechanics. Because when they say fix or repair daily, every weekend it seemed like we were fixing or repairing that darn Pinto. And he seemed to have a good time with it. His Pinto seemed to run great. Mine seemed to never want to take hold and go. We had, just so many events in our lives, even though he was long distance. And when I say he, I really need to extend it to my aunt as well, because they were an incredible team. You really couldn't tell who was, saying we should do this, we should do that. But for my 2 brothers, Mitch, who had passed away last May, Steve and Barb, he was like a father to us. It did so much for us, even though he was 3,000 miles away. And with his family memory, my brother passed on last year. My sister and I were talking after Uncle Mike passed, and she said to me, he's going to go up to heaven, and he's going to see Mitch. He's going to say, what the heck are you doing here? Because we never told him that he died. And we're hoping they're together, looking after our grandparents, and so on. And he was just such a great guy. And he will be missed. Thank you.
Finally, we invite good friend Nancy Kaufman to come up, share words of memory.
Hi there, I'm Nancy, and I met Fran and Mike 6 months after we moved here from Massachusetts. I always say, I didn't want to come here. If you fly over Kansas, you'll see my heel marks. But I came, and Fran was the welcome wagon lady at Temple Isaiah. and she came to welcome us. And that was the beginning of 46-and-a-half-year friendship. Long time. I think Michael's the first one I've lost among my friends. Anyway, I'm old too, so here we go. They were our first friends when we moved here, and they were always wonderful. Do you remember when we went on the Sonol Christmas train? Okay. We shared many Shabbat dinners together, and one of your children asked, do you remember? Why when we go to Nancy's house do we always eat chicken? It was tradition, David. Mike had a PhD, and some people mentioned that he was humble. He never, ever used a title. It just was not who he was. And I really respected him for that, because I see people who have PhDs in education, and they call themselves doctors. Ooh, that's mean. Sorry. How many of you guys were born in Brooklyn? Come on, come on. Well, Mike and Fran and my mother and father and myself were all born in Brooklyn. But Mike and my parents and Fran all went to Madison. Who said that? Boo to you. And whenever they would come to my house, I didn't serve chicken then, they would all sing the James Madison fight songs. And I still think I'm walking down the King's Highway. Yeah. It was wonderful to see. It lit my parents up. They had a good time too. And my son was one of the boys that Mike helped finish the Devil Mountain Run. He put Matt on his shoulder and marched him across the threshold, the finish line, which was just incredible for him to do. I mean, it gave my son what he needed, and I'm forever grateful to him for that. But I will tell you a funny story about Michael. In 1983, Jeff's bar mitzvah, I had just had my first back surgery, and I was in a body cast, so I was wearing maternity clothes because nothing else would fit. So all the way up 680 to the reception, I was referring to myself as a gimp, and my mother started to yell at me because I was putting myself down. Don't say that, you're not a gimp, blah, blah, blah. So I finally said, okay, fine, I won't call myself a gimp. So we walk into the reception, and Mike is over there, and I'm over here with my mother, and he says, oh, look, it's the cripple. And my mother says, no, it's the gimp. All right. He was also very wise. One time I was complaining to him about a customer who was driving me nuts because they needed everything yesterday. And Mike said, a lack of planning on their part does not constitute an emergency for me. And I've made that, so don't ask me for anything because you're an emergency situation. I thought that was a really wonderful statement. Mike was a lot like my father in the sense that he was sweet and kind and gentle. And as with my father, as his illness got worse, he never got nasty, he never got mean. He was sweet right down to his bone marrow, like my dad. And so your dad is like my dad, must mean something. But somebody mentioned how he dressed. Birks with socks. You left out the sweatpants, right? Anyway, I I'm sorry. I'm glad. It means a lot that I've known you guys so long, and I want to thank the boys for standing by you and really pitching in during the last few years. And Fran, couldn't have been done without you. You were fabulous, always. And that's it. Thank you.
And while we take in all of these loving words that honor Mike, our tradition invites us to give tzedakah, charity, on behalf of those who can no longer give. The family asks that you please make your donations to either the Lewy Body Dementia Association or to Beth Chaim Congregation in memory of Mike Birnbaum. And now we say the Kaddish prayer, our prayer of mourning, that is a prayer full of praise, to remind ourselves that there are sacred mysteries beyond our understanding. We say Kaddish to create a bridge to the soul. We say Kaddish to heighten our sense of awe and to open ourselves to feeling and to peace. Please rise as we say this prayer.
You're invited to join with me with this deep prayer of connection. For Mike Birnbaum, Zichrono Livracha, may his memory forever be a blessing. Yitkadal v'yitkadash, Shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Bi'alma divrach chirutei, v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon, uvchayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv, v'imru Amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mevarach, le'olam u'le'olmei olmaya, yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar, v'yitromam, v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar, v'yit'aleh, v'yithalal, shemei dekudisha, b'richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran v'yomam v'imru. Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Zecher, 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 Tzadik livracha, livracha, may his memory bless our days, bless our days. We, all of us here, and all who wanted to, who couldn't be here today, commit to a sacred process of continuing to keep Mike's memory alive. Please join in this commitment, this meditation, with the refrain, "We remember him." In the rising of the sun and in its going down,
we remember him.
In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter,
we remember him.
in the opening of the buds and in the rebirth of spring,
We remember him.
in the blueness of the skies and in the warmth of summer,
We remember him.
in the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn,
We remember him.
in the beginning of the year and when it ends.
We remember him.
As long as we live, he too shall live, for he is now a part of us as,
We remember him.
when we are weary and in need of strength,
We remember him.
when we are lost and sick at heart,
We remember him.
when we have joys we want to share,
We remember him.
when we have decisions that are difficult to make,
We remember him.
when we have achievements that are based on his.
We remember him.
So long as we live, he too shall live, for he is now a part of us as,
We remember him.
may the bond of your love remain unbroken. May you be comforted along with all mourners who mourn today and all who have mourned and will mourn throughout time. May the memory of Mike Birnbaum be a blessing.
Amen.
Amen. We thank you for being here this afternoon to support and comfort the family, those who are in mourning. It's a very special spiritual practice in our tradition. There is a reception following. You're invited to stay and share stories of Mike and continue to provide comfort for the family. This concludes our service. Thank you.